You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. LSU has added a quarterback. It is official. Jayden Daniels from Arizona State has not only committed to play for LSU, but he has sent in his paperwork. LSU has confirmed it. It is a done deal. Jayden Daniels is a Tiger. So interesting. I was doing an interview on the Chuck Oliver show earlier today, and he was asking me, people at Missouri really thought they had a great shot at Jayden Daniels. What happened? I'm like, I don't know. The bizarre part about this is when Jayden Daniels entered the portal mid-February, it was not really well received by his teammates at Arizona State. There was a video that went viral of him like cleaning out his locker. And there was only mild sort of whispers the past couple of weeks around here that Daniels might be interested in taking a visit. And then Sunday, boom. I mean, there's the commitment Instagram post from Jayden Daniels. There's the official post from LSU. It is done. LSU's added another quarterback. So there's a lot to unpack here from what it means for LSU, what it means for the other quarterbacks. What does it tell us about Brian Kelly, Mike Denbrock, what they're looking for? Let me start by saying this is a massive get for LSU. It's massive. Quarterback is the most important position in organized team sports, and there's nothing even remotely close to it. There's no position in team sports even close to being as important as the quarterback position is in football. It is never a bad thing, ever, to add talent and depth and experience to your quarterback room, no matter who it is. I'll remind you that each of the last two seasons, LSU has played 3 quarterbacks in each of the last 2 seasons. In the 2020 COVID year, after Brennan got hurt, you played 2 true freshmen, Max Johnson and TJ Finley. It is never a bad thing to add experience at that position, especially guys who've had the amount of success that someone like Jayden Daniels has. Jayden Daniels, in his career, has started 29 games. 29 games in 3 years at Arizona State. The other 3 quarterbacks on LSU's roster have combined to start 3. That's all Miles Brennan, by the way. The 3 games he started in 2020. And I know a lot of people are going to look at Jayden Daniels statistically, or maybe even question, why would that guy leave? And I do understand why you'd ask that question, because a lot of people ask the same question of Max Johnson when he left LSU. It's like, man, you're the starting quarterback at LSU. Why would you leave? And their situations are actually kind of similar. Max Johnson showed up on campus a year after the national championship. We've been through it. You had COVID. You had all the Black Lives Matter racial injustice marches. The seasons were a disaster. He'd be on his 3rd OC in 3 years this year. He got very frustrated. It was obvious, man. He wanted a fresh start. And he got it. Same thing can be said for Jayden Daniels. He'd be on his 3rd OC in as many years at Arizona State. So much issues there with the NCAA on that staff and staff turnover. When he got there at Arizona State as a freshman and stepped on the field day one as the starting quarterback, he's throwing to Brandon Ayuk, who became a first-round pick, and they just have not had that caliber of player at the receiver position since. A little different at LSU, right? When you just look at Keyshawn Butte and who else is there. So I understand, man. A lot of people look and you say, you look at those numbers and what it's like for Jayden Daniels in his 3 years at Arizona State. Back in 2019, he threw for 2,943 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. In 2020, they played just 4 games that year, but his quarterback rating was still 145.7. I mean, he was a really good player in the 4 games that they played. And then this past year, threw for 2,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 picks. That's where a lot of people go, what happened? The other thing that's very obvious when you look at Jayden Daniels and his statistics is the fact that he went from being a guy that ran as a freshman for 300 yards to, this past season rushing 138 times for 710 yards. The offense changed dramatically, and they required him to run more as a result of what they were doing in a different offensive system. So it's just changed a lot, and I can understand why, if you're Jayden Daniels, you're looking for a fresh start. LSU fans saw it on the flip side with Max Johnson leaving. I think there's a couple of things we probably learned about Mike Denbrock and Brian Kelly now with this decision. This, by the way, when Mike Denbrock met with the media a couple of weeks ago, he was asked about the quarterback position, and he was non-committal. This is what Mike Denbrock said 2 weeks ago when he met, less than 2 weeks ago, when he met with the media about the quarterback position.
It's going to be an interesting spring for Coach Sloan and for all of our offensive unit. Spring football is going to be a little bit of us figuring out exactly what we can be and what we can become throughout the process of building this offense. We haven't had an opportunity to really be on the field and work with these guys all that much yet, but it's coming, which is good. So we can really gauge where that's it, and then we'll, through kind of giving the quarterbacks the information they need to be successful, give them opportunities within the spring to kind of show who really fits into what we're best at doing, and let that competition play its way out and make sure that the best guys out there giving us the best chance to win.
That's the key part to me anyway. The who fits in best to what we're doing. I want to remind you, Mike Denbrock came from Cincinnati. And at Cincinnati this past year, they had Desmond Ridder. Ridder was very much a dual threat type quarterback. If you look at when Mike Denbrock was at Notre Dame with Brian Kelly and the types of quarterbacks that he had there, Malik Zaire was there. Deshaun Kaiser was there while they were together. You're talking about guys that were mobile quarterbacks, not necessarily guys that were going to run a ton, but guys that had the ability to make plays with their feet, extend plays, and tuck it and run if you needed them to. So that's not Miles Brennan. I can certainly understand when Brian Kelly got the job and he needed a quarterback. He goes, look, to Miles Brennan, says, listen, we're going to have to go into the portal one way or the other. You're here. If you want to be here, we still got a spot. And so Brennan's like, cool, I'm in. Well, the opportunity to add Jayden Daniels, who fits maybe more from a skill set, what this offensive staff wants, it makes a lot of sense if you can add him. And it's also worth noting, this staff isn't going to be loyal to Miles Brennan. They're not going to be loyal to any player. It's a new staff with a new vision that's going to come in and play the best player, trying to fit what they're trying to do. And maybe that's not even Brennan or Daniels. I mean, maybe Nussmeier, maybe it's Walker Howard. But I'll remind you, Jamie Howard came on this show on the record and said Walker would be okay redshirting. Jamie's a guy that played a lot early in his career at LSU, learned what it was like as a young player to face adversity, and said, man, it's not a bad thing if Walker sits for a year, grows physically, learns the game more, gets more acclimated to the speed before he's asked to make plays. So if you have an incoming five-star freshman who's not opposed to taking a red shirt, great. What if you go through spring and you end up between Brennan and Nussmeier, one of those guys isn't the starter or doesn't like how the reps are being divvied up, and so they leave. My feeling was LSU was going to be in this position anyway, where they're going to have to add a transfer. I just thought it was going to come after spring, like what would happen with Burrow. Somewhere around college football, teams go through spring. There's a quarterback that doesn't like where his lot is on the roster. He enters the portal, and LSU scoops someone up. That's how I thought it would go. That's what happened with Burrow back in May of 2018. And I thought it would be that way this time. But in essence, now Jayden Daniels entered the portal in February. He's already signed his paperwork with LSU, and he's going to be on campus and go through spring football, which is a major advantage with a new offensive system, being able to get the spring and the fall camp as well before the 2022 season. So, I'll remind you, man, for everybody who might be a little bummed about this news because of what it might mean for Miles Brennan, Brennan played 3 games. He started 3 games in 2020. And I remember because I was on air, I was doing the post-game shows, I was doing all the recaps. The passing yardage number was good against Missouri, but the decision-making wasn't there. That was the whole thing. It was like, man, he was indecisive, he was slow, he was making the wrong reads, held on to the ball too long, took too many sacks. I mean, that was a lot of the criticism. So I don't know that 3-game sample, what people remember of it or think of it, all of a sudden should just, ordain Miles Brennan the guy. But should he have a chance? Absolutely. But if you have an opportunity to add a guy like this who's played 29 career games and he's thrown for 6,000 yards, yeah, that's a no-brainer to add that guy to your quarterback room to generate more competition and certainly to add a lot of experience. So Jayden Daniels, it's official. He is an LSU Tiger, and spring just got a whole lot more interesting moving forward. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.